Good morning, I'm Rachel, and welcome to Third City Christian Church. Our worship service starts in just a minute and will last about an hour. But before we get started, we want to share a few things with you and your family. Groove, our Sunday morning kids programming, is taking place right now in Kid City. Team members are standing by in the plaza to help you get your child checked in. We want every child at Third City to grow in wisdom and stature, just like Jesus did when he was a kid. Our vision at Third City is to live out Love Unlimited, and we want to make it easy for you to know what your next step is, whether it's serving, getting baptized, or growing in community with others. We want to connect you with the resources that will help you worship, serve, and grow. Stop at the hub in the plaza and find out what opportunities are available. We would love to meet you, answer any questions you may have, and if you're new here, we have a free gift for you. We are so glad that you're here with us this morning. Be sure to connect with us at Third City C on social media and download our Third City app. We exist to worship God, serve Him with our lives, and grow as followers of Jesus Christ. Third City is Love Unlimited.
Good morning. Welcome to Third City Christian Church. We're glad to have you here with us this morning. Would you stand as we begin our worship? Sing this out. I've heard 1,000 stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard tender whisper of love in the dead of night, and you tell that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. to your seats. Let's continue in worship this morning. We have an exciting morning this morning. We're going to celebrate the thing that God is doing through Missions of Hope International in Kenya and the partnership with Third City Christian Church. Sing this out this morning.
There's a table that you prepared for me in the presence of my enemies. It's your body and your blood you shed for me. This is how I fight my battles. There's a table that you prepared for me in the presence of my enemies. It's your body and your blood you shed for me. This is how I fight my battles. 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 This is how. In the valley, I know that you're with me. Surely your goodness and your mercy follow me. My weapons are praise and thanksgiving, and this is how I fight my battles.
We have this opportunity this morning to focus on Moby. And the fact is that when we feel like we're surrounded by darkness, many times that's when God could come through. That's when God shows up. And so we want to see how God is showing up in Kenya through the support of our church and many others. Let's sing this out this morning.
It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look
Lord, it's easy to get overwhelmed. It's easy to think that as we're fighting a battle or we're going through life or we have a difficult day, week, month, year ahead of us, or we've had a difficult past, we've had a difficult couple weeks, couple months, couple years. It's easy for us to think that there's no hope. It's easy when we think about what's going on across the world in places like Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, Mexico, that hope is lost. But in your word you say, take heart because you have overcome the world. Your love wins. Your hope wins. And when we fight battles, we're surrounded not only by you, but we're surrounded by people that love you. People that want to love us. It's what the church is all about. The church grows because you're at the center of it. The church grows because people make bold choices every day, every week, every month, every year for you. So Lord, this morning as we get to celebrate the things that you're doing in Africa, through the missions of hope, through this church, God, let us not forget that when we fight our battles, we're being surrounded by you. Amen. You may be seated.
So regardless of which side of the argument you fall upon, Friday you may flip the switch on your Christmas lights. It is like, I know some of you guys were like, hey, it's November 1st, day after Halloween, we're in. As of Friday, you can never complain about anybody having Christmas lights on. So I really love this time of year because people start to look outward a little bit. They start to look at the people around them, maybe care a little more about other people's worlds. You know, the Salvation Army kettles come out. One of the things I love that our church does is we support this ministry called Project Hunger. And as of yesterday, they delivered almost 900 meals to families here in Grand Island. I don't know if you can imagine or if you really knew there were that many families in need in our area. There's probably more. Those are just the ones we knew about. Grateful for that ministry and how they reach out to help people. And so that's one of the things I love about Project Hunger. Also one of the things I love about this time of year is we even take a chance to look globally at other stuff that's going on. That's part of what we're doing today. I want to fill you in on two things. The first one was a trip that one of our elders, Kent Mann, took about a month ago to Uganda. He went to one of the ministries that we support called Livingstone International University. They train local residents to be teachers and educators and I'm guessing like physicians and all those things at the university level to equip them to be leaders within their country. And Kent went over there, and we as a church, I don't know if you guys were aware of this, we asked you to give a love offering as Kent went to take to their ministry, and we were able to bring them $5,000 that they weren't expecting. And it turns out this last week, I'm guessing they're finding some great need for that right now. They have catastrophic flooding going through one of their campuses right now. And as students were supposed to be taking finals, that stuff is going on. And so being able to pray for them and provide for them is one way that I love that we start to look out. And then in addition to that, you've heard us talk about Missions of Hope International, or MOHI. We talk about them nonstop because we're excited about planting a school in the Kariobangi neighborhood in Nairobi. We're excited about planting a church there next fall. You'll hear more about that in a little bit. And we're excited about some of our people that went because their lives have literally been changed as they have seen God's work on the other side of the planet. So I've been instructed to keep it short because you're going to hear other people's stories that are way more exciting than listening to me. So we'll get this started by watching this video.
Good morning, Third City. My name is Parker. My friends and I get the opportunity to tell you stories from the other side of the planet this morning. Couldn't be more excited about it. I want to start by reading Proverbs chapter 25, verse 25. Like cold water to a weary soul is good news from a distant land. That is the essence of this morning. And as a brief overview, we talk about Mohi a lot, Missions of Hope International. It's an organization that started 20 years ago with this vision that if the students would know and love Christ, that their families would be reached as well, and they would be given hope in a future of education that could change entire communities. And they started with an initial class of 50 students, and now 20 years later have 15,000 kiddos going to their schools. So it's incredible what God is doing through that vision and through that mission of Mohi. This morning, where we will start, is my story. Last year, you might remember that in June, I was to interview and preach on missions when our team from Guatemala came back from their trip. The topic was how we should all go into the world. But I was deeply convicted by the Spirit that I can't stand up here and tell you what you should be doing. Instead, I needed to tell you why I wasn't doing it. And it was pretty tough. I literally preached that morning about my terror of overseas missions and my fear of risk and losing control. It's pretty embarrassing as the church guy to do that, but it was completely necessary. And so here I was last December in the initial meeting of going to Kenya this year, and I got all freaked out about all the shots we had to get and all the diseases and viruses we might get and the mosquito bites that might destroy our lives. Like none of that could happen here, right? But I did the same thing. I put my tail between my legs and I walked out. And I completely failed as a husband spiritually leading in that moment because Jane and I, my wife, we didn't talk about it. I didn't ask her to pray about it. I didn't do anything. I just quit out of fear. And so for the next 4 months, I had a spiritual gut ache. It was the feeling of telling a lie and you know you told you a lie. And that kept going on and going on. And one night I thought my anxiousness couldn't get any worse. And then the next morning, I was journaling, like my prayers, like we learned to do in Rooted. And I hadn't been thinking about it, talking about it, considering it for the last 4 months. And all of a sudden I wrote, am I being disobedient not going to Africa? And the stomachache went away immediately. And it was a profoundly spiritual moment for me. And so I'm deeply convicted against all my fears and my terrors of loss, of control. And Jane, my wife, walks in after a morning workout, and she looks at me. She can tell something's up, and I said, I think we have to go to Kenya. And she said, okay. She's 8 times as brave as I am, so it was no big deal. So we started to have these conversations. I went to people, wise people in my life who I knew loved me, loved God, and loved the church, and had these conversations about going or not going, and summed up, all those conversations pointed to the fact that I have got to lead my family in faith, not in fear. And so I thought I was going and I was just going to get to ride along. Cool, I can handle that at this point. And then a week later, I found out that the person that was leading the trip was no longer leading the trip. They couldn't go. And now I heard the words, you're leading. Going to a place I've never been, something I've never done, I'm quite terrified to do. You got to love how God just gives you exactly what you want, right? But it was good. It was good. That's the story of my life, honestly. Long story short, we went to Kenya, and I'm fine today. So, and I'm better for it. I'm thankful for what I learned, what God showed me about faith and being obedient even when you can't see what he sees, and trusting him in all of that. On the 4th day, Melanie Mustin, the co-leader on the trip, asked me, because I let her in on all of this, have any of your fears been realized? And I got to smile and say, nah. Not a single one. Which leads me to my story of Caroline. On the 5th day, we did community home visits with the Mohi social workers. These social workers were hired in each school with the sole purpose of providing love and support to the communities, regardless of whether those people in the communities they were visiting were involved with Mohi or not. They were simply to be a loving presence in their surrounding neighborhoods. The second home we visited was no larger than that drum riser over there. Her name was Caroline. Caroline was a breast cancer survivor and on the road to recovery. Her sister and daughter had taken their lives and put them on the back burner to help her get her back to health. Her sister stayed in the room, and her daughter sat outside during our visit. And through the grapevine, the Mohi social workers had heard Caroline's story and come to pray with her regularly, unknowingly healing wounds that have been given to her by a former church who she felt forgotten by when she was struck with this illness. And she started to love the church again for what it truly was, people being there for each other. And as we talked through translation for about 15 minutes, I asked to speak to her. And I tried to tell her, it is absolutely astounding to me that our little church in Nebraska, by supporting Mohi here in Karyobungi, that supports these social workers to go out and to be with people, is both indirectly and directly loving her. Like our love is going all the way around the world and coming into her home in Karyobungi, and she was feeling it. I could see it. And she looked me in the eye, she smiled, and she said something in Swahili that I couldn't understand, but I could tell came from the bottom of her heart. And I looked at the translator, and he said, she wants you to tell your family, your church, thank you for loving me. I promised her I would tell you. I'll never forget that moment. Someone who is lost and is now found. Someone who is spiritually wounded, who is now being healed. I'll never forget what love can do. How far love can reach and how truly unlimited God's love is. And check this out. Just a few weeks ago, Marion Wallace came back to the States to do some visits, and we got the chance to meet up with them in Omaha. And Mary was talking to Scott on the other side of the table, talking about a woman recovering from breast cancer in Karyobungi that she became aware of, and I kind of perked up and started listening. She said she's felt so loved by those visits, particularly the one when Third City was there, that her daughter, who was sitting outside during the meeting, a teenage mother who was at risk of not being able to provide a future for her child at all, someone who never got the chance to go to school, that daughter felt so loved by that visit that she wanted to do something very scary, very risky. She wanted to go to school. And here's Mary just giggling and laughing with joy, saying, I will absolutely find a way to get this girl education and preach the gospel to her and take care of her baby while she does it. We'll find a way. Just think, Scott. This is a teenager willing to sit in a class with first graders for this opportunity. And that's all, and she says, and this all because of that visit that you guys had when you were there. And that's when I finally piped up and I said, I was there. And I'm so glad that I was. And I can tell you 1,000 stories this morning, but here's the one thing, my family, that I want you to know. When we were going through our orientation for Mohi the first day, they were explaining their vision, and it sounded like this. At Mohi, we will love and reach the children with the gospel, and we know that when a child is won to the Lord, God can reach an entire family. It sounded very familiar. I don't know how many people I've met here at Third City who have come, heard the gospel, received it, started following Jesus because their kids were loved here. And throughout the rest of the orientation, there were several points, sans location, where you could have switched out the name Mohi for Third City, and the vision mission would have fit like a glove. We have the same heartbeat beating on two different sides of the planet. And that's what I've come to share with you this morning. From my experience, I've now traveled to the other side of the planet, into a completely different culture, into as about of a foreign of a place as God could put me. And I got to see firsthand that the gospel that is saving lives here, the same exact gospel, is saving lives there, giving hope, freeing people from sin, giving purpose, unleashing love that is unlimited and unmatched. It is good news that is blowing through cultural boundaries. That's the real deal. The gospel is the real deal. The fact that all of humanity deserves the wrath of God because of our sin and the way that we have disobeyed him. But in love, he stepped down and he came to this world to die for our sake so that we could go free, and then to rise from the dead so that he could show that he has power over death and the grave, and so that we could have a new life within that. That's the real deal. The gospel is the real deal. Like cold water to a weary soul is good news from a distant land. I've got more from Kenya to show you. A round of applause for my brave friends who are willing to come and share their stories with us this morning. This is Carol Wing and Brian Cokes, two good friends of mine. And I just have a few questions for you. Ladies first. What is a story or a memory from Kenya that you'll never forget?
The first day that we were there, we were given the opportunity to walk through the slums and to visit the home of a young mother. And she was among the poorest of the poor. We were told that because of where her room was located. And it was a challenging walk to get to her place. But her room was very small, probably no more than 7 by 7, maybe 8 by 8, very small for herself, her husband, and baby. The room was stifling, but we were allowed to ask her questions about her life and, where she grew up. And as we were talking, the two staff members in our group asked her about her faith in God. And she said that she believed in God, but she was not attending church at that time. And while we were there, she did confess her faith in Christ. She said she would be in church on Sunday morning. But the thing that really stuck with me was what the one staff member said. He said, "We witness every opportunity we have about God." And it seemed to me that in observing the staff of Mohi that they really do. They walk the walk, they talk the talk, and it shows that they really care about the people there. And I also felt like because these people do have less material possessions, that they are more focused and more appreciative of their friends, their family, and what they really do have.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if we would do that, we would probably all be much better off too. But they were blessed and very thankful for what they had.
Yeah. I think we've all shared stories or at least moments where we learned so much from the people we were around and how loving and how welcoming they were. And that, like you said, how much they put relationships in the front row of importance. Brian, what were some things that stuck with you?
So for me, I guess it was the darkness that we were traveling through. There's something that I've never experienced before.
Same.
But the crazy thing was, as dark as it was lit up very quickly when we arrived at the Kariobangi school.
Yeah.
Got to see those blue gates open up, and it was like God just opening his arms and saying, "Welcome, glad you're here. We got some work to do." So, Matthew 9:37 through 38 says, "He said to his disciples, 'The harvest is great, but the workers are few. So pray to the Lord who is in charge of the harvest, and ask him to send more workers into his field.'" I just look forward to returning to the Kariobangi field and seeing how the harvest is going.
Yeah, one thing that I love about those blue gates, and you see them in the videos, is that they open up to let people in, but they also open up to take people out into the communities. And I think that's a beautiful picture of the church, of people also coming in, but also going out to reach people. So final question, what is something that God has changed in you or shown you through this?
Well, many of you are maybe aware that I like to travel, but I never, ever, ever wanted to go to Africa. The one continent I've never had a desire to visit. And once all the excuses that I had were eliminated and I said, "Okay, God, I'll go," I had so much peace in my heart. I've never felt that much peace before. God gives us many talents, and one of the talents he gave me is sewing. And I was given the opportunity to work with a group of 16 young people, teaching them quilting skills. We had one young man among those 16, and he had been in prison for killing somebody. He got out of prison. For some reason, the police were chasing him. He ran into a church, and because they respect the church as a place of sanctuary, the police did not follow him. While he spent his time in the church, he came to accept Christ as his Savior. He became connected with Mohi somehow and was allowed to take the tailoring class in the skills school. And there was just numerous stories like that. His was just one. But what I learned, I think, is that God has given each of us talents, that we need to be using those talents for his glory and to serve others. And if we do that, he will bless us abundantly. And I have been blessed abundantly with the new relationships and friends that I have made, as well as the opportunity to serve God in a new way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of that guy's story, and that is absolutely the evidence that I'm talking about of how the gospel that's saving lives here is saving lives all over the planet and rewriting stories. And his story alone is just a metaphor for all of our stories too. We're on the run, we find sanctuary, we find Jesus, and all of a sudden a new beginning starts. Brian, what about you?
So for me, I think God made me realize that our time here on earth is pretty short, and it probably shouldn't be spent being comfortable. You know, my faith was beginning to be a little stale. Maybe I was getting too comfortable, and I needed a change. So when my wife and I decided that we wanted to go on this missions trip and be a part of it, that was definitely an uncomfortable situation, just like being up here is now. But we knew the whole trip there'd be a lot of uncomfortable situations as well. So, but I didn't realize once it's all said and done how good it felt to be uncomfortable. And the cool thing was that I got to be in the front row seat to see God do some amazing things in my life and the rest of the staff or the team.
Well, round of applause for my friends being willing to be uncomfortable. tell their stories, share some stories. We're moving into a time of communion, and I love this thought of becoming uncomfortable. And that's the most beautiful part of this good news of the gospel, is that God is not calling us to ascend to him, but he is rather becoming uncomfortable and coming down to where we are, meeting us in our mess, in our muck, and saying, I love you, I'll save you, and you're free to rejoice in this freedom as well. And so as we move into communion, remember the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, the discomfort he went through so that for eternity we could have comfort in him. And then we'll show you some more stories from Kenya.
wewe, no other God like him.
Yeah.
So when we are walking, we are searching for God. Where can we find him? Nowhere. But he's here.
All the poor power, all the lost and lonely, all the thieves who come confess, know that you are holy, know that you are holy. And all sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah.
So this is your card. I think that what you've heard today is really indicative of what we've been finding out all along with our partnership with our family in Kenya with Missions of Hope International. And we really do feel like this is an extension of Third City Christian Church in Africa. And I know they feel that way about Third City too. And so we want to challenge you in 3 direct ways. The first way is please be praying for our ministry across the world, and especially in Kenya right now. And I want to let you know that they're ready to open the church that we're sponsoring. And a young man named Solomon is the pastor, the preacher. So keep Solomon in your prayers. Mary Camus, who's the founder of Missions of Hope, told me last month that this will be the first bit of light that a church has brought into that neighborhood in some time. So we're really excited about what's going to happen. But please be praying for Solomon and his family. The second thing is we want to build a school there. Right now the school is meeting in the training center, and so we need facilities. And just like if we needed facilities here, we'd find a way to challenge each other to fund that. So we're challenging you. So our Hope for Kenya offering during December will go toward building the school. So if you can be generous with that, we'd really appreciate it, and we know you will be. And then the third thing is, so many of you are already sponsoring children, over 250 people from Third City sponsoring children. It is the lifeblood of our school. For $38 a month, you can sponsor a child. That's about what an average family pays on toilet paper a month. That's about what that is. And so you're going to change someone's life forever. You're going to give them education. You're going to give them sustenance that meets their daily needs. And God willing, you're going to bring them hope through Christ. And so we challenge you to that. So there's still a few sponsorships that we need to make just to fill up our school now, but then there's 90 coming in 2020. So stop out at the table in the plaza, and you can learn more about child sponsorship, and we thank you for that. So great day, and we appreciate you so much, and your prayers, your support for our church and for Missions of Hope.
Let's stand as we close and worship this morning. Sing this out, church. You give life, you are love, you bring light to the darkness, you give hope words out this morning. Let us focus on them. That all the earth would shout his praise. All the earth. What a great opportunity we have to lift up his name.